My name is Isabella and I'm 28 years old. As an event planner in Chicago, I've organized countless successful gatherings, but nothing prepared me for my father's retirement party. I spent months ensuring every detail was perfect, expecting to finally earn his approval. Instead, as I approached the podium to speak, he leaned in and whispered words that shattered my heart. "I'm ashamed of you." That night changed everything. What he didn't know was that I would soon uncover the truth behind our family's perfect facade and reveal it to everyone. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If my journey resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of standing up for yourself even when it breaks your heart. Growing up as the middle child in the Anderson family came with unspoken expectations. My father, Robert Anderson, wasn't just any doctor. He was one of Chicago's most celebrated surgeons. His name appeared in medical journals, and his opinion was sought after by colleagues across the country. My mother, Diane, complimented his professional success with her role as the perfect socialite hosting charity galas and maintaining our family's spotless reputation in Chicago's elite circles. My older brother James followed the expected path. From childhood, he displayed the academic discipline and ambition my father valued. Their relationship blossomed over discussions of medical journals and hospital politics at the dinner table. When James graduated medical school with honors and began his residency at the same prestigious hospital where my father built his career, I watched my father's chest swell with pride. My younger sister Abigail was the family prodigy. She breezed through high school and into an Ivy League university, now pursuing law with the same determination my father exhibited in his field. Her sharp mind and articulate arguments during family discussions always earned approving nods from both my parents. Then there was me, Isabella Anderson, the middle child who never quite fit the mold. While James dissected frogs in science club and Abigail won debate competitions, I was designing homecoming decorations and organizing fundraising events. My creativity and ability to bring people together were talents that went unacknowledged in our achievement-oriented household. Event planning isn't a real career, Isabella. My father once told me during my senior year of college when I announced my intentions. It's a hobby at best. You're smart enough for medical school or law. Why waste your potential? Despite his disapproval, I pursued my passion. I started small, planning friends' weddings and local charity events. Gradually, my reputation grew. After 5 years of building my business, Anderson Events became one of Chicago's sought-after boutique event planning companies. I specialized in high-profile corporate and professional events, bringing the same precision and excellence to my work that my father brought to his surgeries. Still, no accomplishment of mine ever seemed to measure up in his eyes. When my father announced his retirement after 35 years in medicine, I immediately volunteered to plan his retirement celebration. This was my chance to prove myself, to show him that my career choice was valid and valuable. I secured the Grand Ballroom at the Peninsula Chicago, one of the city's most exclusive venues. The guest list included 200 of the most prominent medical professionals in the Midwest, along with family, friends, and colleagues who had witnessed my father's illustrious career. I obsessed over every detail for months. The lighting was designed to complement the sophisticated navy and silver color scheme. The menu featured my father's favorite dishes elevated to gourmet status. I arranged for his mentor, now in his 80s, to fly in from Boston as a surprise guest. The centerpieces incorporated subtle nods to his medical achievements, and the program highlighted the milestones of his career through elegant visual displays. "This is going to be spectacular," my assistant Lisa assured me as we reviewed the final arrangements the week before the event. "Your father will be so impressed." I wanted to believe her, but a familiar knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. 2 weeks earlier, we'd had our monthly family dinner, and despite my growing success, my career was once again dismissed. "How's the party planning business?" my father had asked, not looking up from cutting his steak. "It's event planning, Dad, and it's going very well. I just secured the Lakewood Medical Association's annual gala." He responded, then immediately turned to James. "Tell me more about that experimental procedure your department is considering." My mother noticed my fallen expression and quickly jumped in. "Isabella's events are always beautiful. Remember the Christmas charity ball last year? Everyone said it was the best in years. My father merely nodded before continuing his conversation with James about the hospital's latest technology acquisition. Despite these painful interactions, I held on to hope that successfully executing his retirement party would finally earn his respect. The night of the event arrived and everything was unfolding perfectly. The room looked stunning. The catering staff executed the service flawlessly, and guests were effusive with their compliments. "Robert must be so proud of you," commented Dr. Wilson, one of my father's oldest colleagues, as he admired the thoughtfully curated display of my father's achievements. I smiled politely, but couldn't honestly confirm his assumption. Pride was not an emotion my father had ever directed toward me. As the evening progressed, my anxiety gradually gave way to professional satisfaction. The event was running smoothly, exactly as I had envisioned it. Around 9 o'clock, it was time for the speeches and formal acknowledgments. As the host and planner, I would introduce my father, who would then give his retirement address to his colleagues and friends. I approached the stage confident in my elegant black dress and the success of the evening thus far. This was my moment to shine in my professional capacity to introduce my father with the respect and admiration he deserved regardless of our personal dynamics. What I didn't expect was that this moment would change everything between us forever. The ballroom glowed with warm lighting as the guests settled into their seats, champagne glasses in hand. Standing at the podium, I surveyed the room filled with Chicago's medical elite. My father sat at the head table, commanding attention, even in silence. His silver hair perfectly styled, his posture impeccable in his tailored suit. My mother sat beside him, her practiced smile never wavering. I tapped the microphone gently and began my introduction. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Isabella Anderson, and it's my honor not only to have planned tonight's celebration, but also to introduce our guest of honor, my father." The speech I had prepared highlighted my father's professional achievements, while adding personal touches that only a daughter could provide. As I spoke about his dedication to his patients and contributions to surgical techniques, I noticed heads nodding appreciatively around the room. For once, I felt connected to my father's world. "And now," I concluded, "please join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Anderson to share some words as he celebrates this milestone." Applause filled the room as my father rose from his seat. As we passed each other at the podium, I expected perhaps a nod or brief smile, some small acknowledgement of the event I had created in his honor. Instead, he leaned close, his expression unchanged, and whispered the words that would echo in my mind for months. "I'm ashamed of you." The shock hit me like physical pain. My steps faltered, and for a moment I feared I might stumble in front of everyone. The room seemed to tilt as I struggled to process what had just happened. His words made no sense. The event was flawless. My speech had been respectful and professional. What possible reason could he have for shame? I somehow made it back to my seat as my father began addressing his colleagues. His voice carried through the ballroom with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Looking around this room, I see the faces of those who have contributed to medicine alongside me for decades." He thanked colleagues, mentors, hospital administrators, even the catering staff received acknowledgement. But there was no mention of the months of work I had invested in creating this perfect evening. It was as if the event had materialized by itself. From across the table, I caught my mother's concerned glance. She had witnessed something in our exchange, though she couldn't have heard his words. Next to her, James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between our father and me. While my father continued speaking, my mind raced. What had I done to deserve such contempt? Was my career choice still such a disappointment that he would choose this moment to express his shame? Or was there something deeper, something I was missing? Memories flashed through my mind, other moments when I had sought his approval only to be met with dismissal or criticism. The science fair, where my creative presentation received no acknowledgement, while James's technical display earned effusive praise. The high school graduation, where my father barely glanced at my diploma despite my graduating with honors. the opening of my business, which he hadn't attended, despite being invited months in advance. My chest tightened as I struggled to maintain my composure. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Not here. Not in front of everyone who mattered in his professional world. When my father finished his speech, the room erupted in standing applause. I rose mechanically, clapping along with everyone else while feeling completely detached from the celebration. As soon as it was socially acceptable, I slipped away to the restroom, locking myself in a stall as tears threatened to spill over. I pressed my hands against the cool marble wall, taking deep breaths to regain control. "Are you all right in there?" A voice came from outside the stall, one of the servers who had noticed my hasty exit. "I'm fine," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just needed a moment." "If you don't mind me saying," she continued hesitantly, "I saw what happened up there. I couldn't hear what your dad said, but whatever it was, the party is amazing. You did a beautiful job." Her kindness nearly undid my fragile composure. I thanked her quickly and splashed cold water on my face before returning to the ballroom with a professional smile firmly in place. For the remainder of the evening, I avoided direct interaction with my father. I circulated among guests, accepting compliments on the event with practiced grace, while feeling increasingly hollow inside. From across the room, I observed my father surrounded by admirers, his arm around James's shoulders, as he introduced him as the future of Anderson medical excellence. My mother attempted an awkward reconciliation, approaching me with a champagne flute. "Darling, everything is just lovely. Your father is very impressed, even if he doesn't say it." "Is he, Mom?" Because he made his feelings quite clear. She blinked rapidly, discomfort evident in her expression. "You know how he is on these professional occasions, so focused on maintaining a certain image." "And I don't fit that image, do I?" I replied quietly. Before she could respond, we were interrupted by a hospital board member wanting to discuss a potential fundraising event. My mother squeezed my arm before drifting back to my father's side. As the party wound down, guests approached to thank me for an exceptional evening. Each compliment felt like a small vindication, evidence that my professional skills were valuable and appreciated, just not by the one person whose opinion had always mattered most. The final moments of the celebration found me standing alone near the exit, watching as my father received one last standing ovation from his colleagues. Despite organizing every aspect of this triumphant send-off, I remained invisible in his narrative, a supporting character not worth mentioning. As guests filed out, the weight of his whispered words settled deeper into my heart. I was no longer just hurt. I was angry. And beneath that anger lay a determination to understand what could possibly make a father ashamed of a daughter who had done nothing but try to make him proud. The morning after the retirement party, my phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. My mother had called 3 times and left voicemails that gradually escalated from casual checking in to concerned questioning about my abrupt departure from the event. "Isabella, call me back. Your father noticed you left without saying goodbye. We need to talk about what happened." I silenced my phone and focused on finalizing invoices from the party vendors. Work had always been my refuge, the place where my contributions were valued and my decisions respected. Today, I needed that affirmation more than ever. Around noon, the door to my downtown office opened, and my best friend Taylor walked in carrying 2 large coffees and a paper bag from our favorite bakery. "I come bearing caffeine and carbs," she announced, setting everything on my desk. "I figured you might need both after last night." Taylor had attended the retirement party both as my moral support and to network for her journalism career. She had witnessed the exchange with my father, but had been cornered by a hospital administrator when I made my escape to the restroom. She said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Are we going to talk about the Arctic chill between you and Dr. Daddy Dearest last night?" I sighed, reaching for the coffee. He told me he was ashamed of me, right there at the podium in front of everyone. Taylor's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "He what? Why, the event was incredible, Izzy. Apparently excellence isn't enough when it's in the wrong field." I replied, the bitterness evident in my voice. 28 years of trying to earn his approval, and I'm still falling short. "You need to confront him," Taylor insisted. This isn't normal parent-child disappointment. This is emotional abuse. I shook my head. Confronting him would require him to actually listen, which has never been his strong suit when it comes to me. For the next week, I immersed myself in work accepting new clients and drafting proposals for upcoming events. I ignored calls from my family, responding only to my sister Abigail's text messages, with brief assurances that I was fine, just busy. On Friday afternoon, my assistant knocked tentatively on my office door. "There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." A Margaret Winters. The name was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. "Send her in." A woman in her early 60s entered my office. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she carried herself with the efficient posture of someone accustomed to busy hospital corridors. Recognition dawned as she approached my desk. "You're my father's head surgical nurse," I said, rising to shake her hand. She corrected with a small smile. "I'm retiring too, though, with considerably less fanfare than your father. You might not remember me, but I've known you since you were a little girl visiting the hospital with your mother." I gestured for her to sit. "What can I do for you, Ms. Winters?" "Margaret, please." She settled into the chair, her expression turning serious. I debated for weeks whether to come here, but after seeing what happened at the retirement party, I knew I couldn't remain silent any longer. My body tensed. "You saw. I've worked alongside your father for 25 years, Isabella. I've become quite adept at reading his expressions and noticing things others miss." She leaned forward slightly. "There's information you should have about your father, his career, and possibly why he treats you the way he does." My initial instinct was to decline whatever she was offering. I'd spent a lifetime being disappointed by my father. Did I really need more reasons to feel hurt? "I appreciate your concern," I began hesitantly. "This isn't just about family dynamics," Margaret interrupted. "It's about professional ethics and patterns of behavior that have affected many people's lives and careers, including, I suspect, your relationship with him." Something in her tone, a mixture of resolve and regret, made me reconsider. "I have dinner plans tonight, but I could meet you tomorrow." "I'll text you the address of a restaurant in Evanston," she replied, standing to leave. "Somewhere we won't run into hospital staff." The following evening, I met Margaret at a quiet Italian restaurant far from my father's usual haunts. After ordering, she wasted no time getting to the point. "Your father is brilliant," she began, "but his success isn't entirely his own." Over the next hour, Margaret revealed a pattern of behavior that left me stunned. She described how my father had systematically taken credit for other doctors' innovations and research over decades. Junior surgeons who developed new techniques would find my father presenting them at conferences. Research conducted by others would appear in papers with my father as the primary author. Promising medical residents who questioned these practices would suddenly find their careers stalled. "I kept records," Margaret said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Emails, documentation of original workdates of procedures. I'm not proud that I stayed silent so long, but your father can be very convincing about how these collaborations benefit the greater good of medicine." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my fingers resting on the flash drive. "Two reasons," Margaret replied. "First, Dr. Lena Williams. She's a brilliant oncologist who developed a potentially groundbreaking approach to treating aggressive breast cancer. Your father is preparing to publish her findings under his name before he fully retires. She nearly lost her position when she objected." She paused, taking a sip of water before continuing. "The second reason is you, Isabella. I've watched how he treats you for years. I believe his dismissal of your career, his apparent shame, stems from something specific." "What do you mean?" "You've always had strong ethical principles even as a child. Remember when you were about 12 and you questioned your father about a surgery he claimed to have pioneered? You'd read something in a medical journal your brother left out that contradicted his story." The memory surfaced slowly. I recalled my father's uncharacteristic anger, how he dismissed me from the dinner table for being disrespectful. "Your father sees your integrity as a threat," Margaret continued. "Your career choice disappointed him, yes, but I think what truly bothers him is that you're the child most likely to hold him accountable, the child who might expose the truth if you knew it." I sat back in my chair processing this revelation. That's why he was so angry at the retirement party. The event featured displays about his medical achievements that weren't entirely his. Margaret nodded. The program you created highlighted several procedures and research papers that I know for certain originated with other doctors. That night I stayed up until dawn, reviewing the files Margaret had given me. There was extensive documentation emails, where colleagues presented ideas that my father later claimed as his own early drafts of research papers, with different primary authors' testimonials from doctors who had left the hospital after conflicts with my father. Most damning was a folder dedicated to Dr. Lena Williams, containing her original research notes alongside the paper my father was preparing to publish. The similarities were undeniable, the ethical breach clear, as morning light filtered through my apartment windows. I reached a decision. The truth my father had tried to hide was finally clear, and with it came a new understanding of our relationship. His shame wasn't directed at me, it was his own projected onto the child most likely to recognize it for what it was. For the first time in my life, I felt free from the burden of seeking his approval. What I needed now was justice, not just for myself, but for all those whose work had been overshadowed by Robert Anderson's carefully constructed legacy. After my meeting with Margaret, I spent several days verifying her claims. I contacted some of the doctors mentioned in her files, framing my inquiries as research for a potential medical event. Their carefully worded responses confirmed Margaret's allegations. Many had stories of contributions diminished or entirely appropriated by my father. Dr. Lena Williams proved the most forthcoming after I reached out directly about her research. We met at a coffee shop near Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where she now worked after leaving my father's institution. I developed this protocol over 3 years. She explained, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When I presented my findings to the department, your father was enthusiastic. Too enthusiastic, I realized later. Within weeks, he had incorporated my data into his own research and was preparing a publication. Her eyes, tired behind stylish glasses, met mine directly. That research could help thousands of women, Isabella. I don't even care about the credit anymore. I just want it published correctly so other oncologists can implement the protocol. Her dedication to her patients, despite my father's betrayal, strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about family dynamics. It was about professional ethics and potentially saving lives. That weekend, my mother called to remind me about the family dinner celebrating James's promotion to department head, a position previously held by my father. Under normal circumstances, I would have made an excuse to avoid another uncomfortable family gathering. This time I accepted immediately. Wonderful, my mother exclaimed, clearly surprised by my easy agreement. Your father will be pleased. I doubted that very much, but I kept the thought to myself. Before the dinner, I consulted with Taylor, who had been helping me organize the evidence. As a journalist who specialized in healthcare reporting, she understood both the ethical implications and potential fallout. Are you sure you want to do this at a family dinner? She asked as we reviewed the materials I planned to bring. This could get ugly fast. It needs to be in person, I replied, and I need James and Abigail to hear it directly from me, not through the hospital grapevine or our parents. Taylor nodded, her expression concerned but supportive. Just remember, this isn't just about your relationship with your father anymore. This could affect his legal standing, his reputation, even possibly lead to investigations into his research. I know, I said quietly. But after what he said to me at that party, after a lifetime of making me feel inadequate while building his career on other people's work, I can't stay silent. On Sunday evening, I arrived at my parents' suburban mansion carrying both a bottle of champagne for James's promotion and a portfolio containing key evidence. My mother greeted me at the door with her practiced social smile. Isabella, we were beginning to think you'd forgotten how to find your way home, she said, kissing my cheek. Everyone's in the living room. I followed her through the familiar hallway, passing walls lined with family photos that told our carefully curated story. My father's medical school graduation, my parents' wedding, James in his white coat, Abigail at law school orientation. Even my college graduation made the wall, though my business launch was noticeably absent. In the living room, James sat with his pregnant wife Sophie on the plush sofa. My father stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, deep in conversation with Abigail, who had come home from law school for the weekend. He barely glanced up when I entered. The prodigal daughter returns, James said, rising to give me a hug. We missed you at Sunday dinners. Been busy with work, I replied, returning his embrace before greeting Sophie and Abigail. My father finally acknowledged me with a curt nod. Isabella. Dad, I responded with equal brevity. My mother, ever the mediator, quickly jumped in. Dinner's almost ready. James, why don't you open Isabella's champagne for a toast before we eat? Dinner proceeded with excruciatingly polite conversation. My mother inquired about my recent events. Abigail described her law school classes. Sophie shared updates about the nursery they were preparing for their expected son. Through it all, my father remained engaged with everyone except me. As dessert was served, my father raised his glass. To James, following in the Anderson tradition of medical excellence, your promotion is well-deserved, son. Everyone clinked glasses, and my father continued. It's gratifying to see my legacy continue through a child who understands the value of a meaningful career. The pointed comment hung in the air. My mother's smile faltered slightly. James looked uncomfortable. Abigail glanced between our father and me, sensing the tension. It was the opening I needed. What exactly constitutes a meaningful career, Dad? I asked, my voice calm despite my racing heart. Is it the title, the prestige? Or is it the integrity with which you do your work? My father's expression hardened. Integrity is certainly essential in medicine where lives are at stake. Not all professions carry such responsibility. Interesting, you should mention integrity, I replied, reaching for my portfolio. I've been thinking a lot about that since your retirement party. Isabella, my mother interjected. Perhaps this isn't the time for… Actually, Mom, I think this is exactly the right time. I turned back to my father. Tell me, Dad, what were your thoughts on Dr. Lena Williams's cancer research, the protocol she developed that you're planning to publish under your name? The color drained from my father's face. For once, he seemed at a loss for words. What are you talking about? James asked, looking confused. I opened the portfolio and carefully laid out copies of Dr. Williams's original research alongside my father's draft publication. I'm talking about a pattern of behavior that spans decades, taking credit for others' work, building a reputation on stolen ideas, intimidating colleagues who speak up. This is absurd, my father finally sputtered, standing abruptly. I won't sit here and be accused by my own daughter. Sit down, Robert, my mother said, her voice uncharacteristically firm. Let her speak. Surprised by her intervention, my father slowly returned to his seat, his expression thunderous. I have emails, I continued, laying out more documents. Testimonials from doctors who left the hospital after their work was appropriated. Margaret Winters provided extensive documentation before her retirement. Margaret always was jealous of my success, my father scoffed, though I noticed his confidence wavering. Dad, James interjected, examining one of the papers. This surgical technique, you told me you developed this. But these notes clearly show Dr. Patterson created it. Collaborative medicine is complex, my father replied dismissively. Ideas build upon each other. This isn't collaboration, Abigail said, her legal training evident as she scrutinized another document. This is plagiarism at best, fraud at worst. My father attempted to stand again, but I moved to block his exit from the dining room. Years of suppressed emotion rose to the surface as I finally confronted him. You told me you were ashamed of me at your retirement party, I said, my voice shaking slightly. In front of everyone who matters to you professionally, you tried to diminish me. But the truth is, you're ashamed of yourself. You're terrified that someone will discover your success is built on lies. You ungrateful child, he hissed. Everything I've done has been for this family. The reputation I built gave you all privileged lives. At whose expense? I countered. Dr. Williams could have advanced breast cancer treatment years ago if you hadn't suppressed her research to enhance your own reputation. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Robert, tell me this isn't true. My father's defense crumbled further as James continued examining the evidence. Dad, I know these doctors. They've made comments over the years, but I dismiss them as professional jealousy. This is systematic. There may have been some attribution issues. My father finally conceded, his tone shifting to one I recognized from his public apologies when complications arose with patients. The nature of academic medicine sometimes requires senior physicians to guide junior colleagues' work. Perhaps in my enthusiasm to advance medical knowledge, boundaries became unclear. Boundaries didn't become unclear, I insisted. You deliberately crossed them repeatedly, knowing your position protected you from consequences. My mother, who had been silent for several minutes, suddenly spoke. I suspected something wasn't right. The late nights when you were supposedly writing papers that seemed to come together too quickly. The colleagues who stopped coming to our home after successful collaborations. Diane, don't be ridiculous, my father snapped. You've never understood the competitive nature of medical research. Don't speak to Mom that way, Abigail interjected. She's not the one who needs to explain herself right now. James looked devastated as he continued reviewing the documents. The hospital ethics board will need to see these. There could be retractions investigations. You would ruin your own father's reputation, my father demanded. After everything I've done to pave the way for your career. I'm a physician first, James replied quietly. My obligation is to medical ethics and truth. My father turned his fury back to me. This is your doing. You've always been jealous of your siblings' success. This is revenge because I dared to express disappointment in your frivolous career choice. The accusation might have wounded me deeply a week earlier. Now, understanding the true nature of his shame, his words held no power over me. My career involves creating meaningful experiences that bring people joy and connection. I replied steadily. I've never had to steal anyone else's work to succeed. Can you say the same? The dinner ended in chaos. My father stormed out to his study. My mother alternated between tearful disbelief and angry demands for more information. James called the hospital's legal counsel for preliminary advice. Abigail started researching precedents for academic medical fraud. As I prepared to leave, my mother followed me to the door. Why now, Isabella? After all these years, because I finally understand that his disapproval was never about me, I answered. And because Dr. Williams deserves credit for work that could save lives. I drove home that night feeling both emotionally drained and strangely liberated. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my father not from a place of seeking approval, but from a commitment to truth. Whatever came next, I knew I had done the right thing. What I didn't anticipate was just how quickly everything would unravel. The week following the family dinner was a whirlwind of consequences. My father's lawyer called Monday morning, threatening legal action if I continued spreading defamatory claims. I calmly informed him that truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and suggested he review the evidence before proceeding with empty threats. That same day, Dr. Lena Williams contacted me. The hospital board has reached out to me, she said, her voice tense with suppressed excitement. They're conducting a preliminary review of your father's research publications. I wasn't surprised. James had texted late Sunday night. I had to report what I saw. Ethics board meeting tomorrow. Dad doesn't know it was me. Then my professional life began suffering collateral damage. 2 corporate clients with connections to the hospital canceled upcoming events, citing scheduling conflicts that I suspected were actually loyalty to my father. My mother left tearful voicemails begging me to fix this situation before it destroys our family. Taylor remained my steadfast support, helping me document everything and providing perspective when my resolve wavered. Remember, she said during a late-night strategy session in my apartment, this isn't just about your relationship with your father. This is about academic integrity and patients who could benefit from suppressed research. Thursday evening, I returned home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I cautiously pushed it open to discover my living room in disarray. Drawers had been emptied, sofa cushions slashed, and my home office thoroughly ransacked. The flash drive Margaret had given me was missing from my desk drawer. The police officer who responded to my call seemed skeptical about connecting the break-in to my family situation. Could be random, he suggested, though we both knew better. I was still cleaning up the mess when James called. Can we meet? He asked, his voice lowered as if afraid of being overheard. Not at your place or mine, somewhere neutral. We agreed on a 24-hour diner in a neighborhood far from our usual haunts. James arrived looking exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, and his usually impeccable appearance noticeably disheveled. Dad knows I reported him, he said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from me. He's calling in every favor pressuring colleagues to discredit the allegations. But there's more evidence than what you showed us at dinner. James revealed that after seeing the documentation I'd presented, he'd begun his own investigation into our father's research history. There are at least 7 more instances I've confirmed where he claimed primary credit for others' work. 3 more doctors have come forward since the ethics board announced their investigation. How's Sophie handling all this? I asked, concerned about my sister-in-law's pregnancy. James ran a hand through his hair. She's supportive, but worried. Dad implied my career could suffer by association. He's not entirely wrong, there will be fallout. But I can't be part of covering this up. We were interrupted by my phone buzzing with a text from Abigail. Just arrived home from school, need to talk to both of you. Family emergency. Mom must have called her. I sighed, showing James the message. We met Abigail the following morning at her favorite cafe near Northwestern University Law School. Always the most composed of the Anderson children. Even she looked rattled. I've been researching similar cases of academic misconduct, she explained, pulling out her laptop. The legal implications are serious. Beyond potential civil liability to the doctors whose work was appropriated, there could be fraud charges if research was funded by federal grants. Has Mom spoken to you? James asked. Abigail nodded grimly. She wants us to handle this internally. She's scheduled a family meeting for Sunday. Dad apparently has a proposal. What kind of proposal? I asked skeptically. She wouldn't say, but I suspect it involves money and silence. Sunday arrived with a sense of impending confrontation. This time we met at my parents' house without spouses or partners, just the core Anderson family. My father sat at the head of the dining table looking somehow both diminished and dangerous. My mother hovered nearby, her usual social polish, replaced by nervous energy. I've asked you all here to resolve this unfortunate situation, my father began once we were seated. What Isabella has instigated has the potential to damage not just my reputation, but all of yours as well. What I instigated was the truth coming to light, I replied evenly. My father continued as if I hadn't spoken. I've prepared a proposal. The Anderson Family Foundation for Medical Innovation will be established with an initial endowment of $5 million. It will fund promising research by early career physicians with particular focus on oncology. He slid folders across the table to each of us. In exchange for this contribution to medical science, I expect this matter to be handled discreetly and internally. The Foundation announcement will acknowledge that some of my published work involved greater collaboration than previously credited, a minor correction that maintains dignity for all involved. You're trying to buy your way out of accountability, I said, not bothering to open the folder. I'm offering a solution that benefits medical science while preserving this family's standing, he countered. James flipped through the proposal with a deepening frown. This foundation concept, it's remarkably similar to the research institute Dr. Williams was trying to establish before she left the hospital. My father's expression flickered momentarily. Great minds think alike. Or one mind creates and another appropriates, Abigail observed dryly. My mother interjected, her voice pleading. Please, children, your father is offering a generous compromise. Think of what this could mean for the Anderson name. That's all this has ever been about, isn't it? I said finally, giving voice to years of frustration. Maintaining the perfect Anderson image, the successful surgeon father, the supportive socialite mother, the brilliant doctor son and lawyer daughter, and me, the perpetual disappointment who wouldn't play her assigned role. Isabella, that's not fair, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it Dad told me he was ashamed of me in front of hundreds of people? Not because I failed at something or hurt someone, but because I chose a career path he couldn't control or take credit for. You're being dramatic, my father dismissed. I had concerns about your choice of venue for the retirement party. The timing of my comment was unfortunate. The blatant lie ignited something in me. Years of suppressed feelings, the hurt of conditional love, the constant striving for approval that never came erupted into words I couldn't hold back. You've gaslit me my entire life, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. Made me believe I wasn't good enough, smart enough, accomplished enough. But the truth is, you were afraid of me. Afraid I'd see through your carefully constructed facade because I inherited Mom's emotional intelligence along with your analytical mind. My father stood abruptly. I won't be psychoanalyzed by my own daughter. Then how about being held accountable by the medical community? James interjected. This proposal isn't justice, it's damage control. You ungrateful children have no idea the sacrifices I've made. My father thundered, his composed veneer finally cracking. The compromises required to build the legacy that has given you every advantage. Those weren't your sacrifices to make, I countered. They were the careers and contributions of colleagues you stepped on to elevate yourself. My mother began crying openly now. Please stop this. We can work together to find a solution. There is a solution, Abigail said quietly. Dad publicly acknowledges what he did, makes amends to the doctors affected, and faces whatever professional consequences result. The truth isn't negotiable. My father's face contorted with rage. After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me, by siding with Isabella's vindictive campaign. This isn't about sides, James said. It's about integrity, the very value you claim to instill in us. Get out, my father snarled. All of you. When you've come to your senses and realized what's truly at stake for this family, we can discuss reasonable solutions. As we gathered our things to leave, my mother followed us to the door, her elegant appearance now marred by smeared makeup and desperate eyes. He's not a bad man, she pleaded. He just lost perspective somewhere along the way. That's the problem, Mom, I replied gently. His perspective has always been crystal clear. His ambition matters more than anyone else's truth. Driving away from the house I grew up in, I felt a surprising calm. For the first time, I had stood my ground not from a place of seeking approval, but from conviction in what was right. Whatever came next, I knew I had finally broken free from the cycle of seeking validation I would never receive. What I didn't realize was that the most public confrontation was yet to come. 3 days after our family meeting, I received an unexpected call from the hospital's communications director. My father had scheduled a press conference for the following day to announce the creation of his new medical foundation. Given my event planning expertise, would I be available to assist with last-minute arrangements? The irony was almost too perfect. He was attempting to co-opt my professional skills to launch his damage control campaign. I'm afraid I have a scheduling conflict, I replied smoothly. But I'm happy to recommend another event coordinator. That evening, Dr. Williams called me. The hospital board has completed their initial investigation, she said, her voice tense with controlled emotion. They've substantiated most of the claims against your father. What happens now? I asked. They're giving him the opportunity to address the findings before they take official action, she explained. I suspect that's what tomorrow's press conference is really about, getting ahead of the story. I hesitated before asking my next question. Are you planning to attend? Yes, she replied firmly, and I'm prepared to speak if necessary. This isn't just about my research anymore. It's about every young doctor who's been silenced. After we hung up, I called James and Abigail to share what I'd learned. We agreed to attend the press conference together, not to support our father, but to ensure the truth wasn't buried beneath carefully crafted public relations. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, choosing a structured navy dress that projected professional confidence. As I applied my makeup, I realized my hands were steady, despite the confrontation ahead. The nervous daughter seeking approval had been replaced by a woman standing firmly in her own truth. The hospital's conference center was packed when we arrived. Local medical reporters filled the front rows, while hospital staff and board members occupied the sides. My father stood near the podium conferring with his attorney and the hospital's public relations director. He faltered momentarily when he saw the three of us enter, then quickly recovered his composed expression. James, Abigail, and I found seats near the back, deliberately positioning ourselves in my father's line of sight. Dr. Williams sat across the aisle, accompanied by two other physicians I recognized from Margaret's files. The hospital's chief of medicine opened the proceedings with a brief introduction, careful to maintain a neutral tone, despite the tension permeating the room. My father then approached the podium, the picture of distinguished medical authority in his tailored suit and silver hair. Thank you all for coming today. He began, his voice carrying the same confident authority that had dominated our family dinners for decades. After 35 years of service to this hospital and the broader medical community, I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Anderson Foundation for Medical Innovation. He outlined the foundation's mission to support early career researchers, particularly in oncology. The irony of his appropriating Dr. Williams's concept while she sat in the audience was not lost on me. Medicine has always been a collaborative field, he continued smoothly. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working with brilliant colleagues whose contributions have enhanced my own work. I watched his performance with a strange detachment. This was my father's element controlling the narrative, presenting himself as the benevolent authority figure. For years, I had accepted his version of reality without question. Now I saw clearly the careful construction of his public persona. In recent days, he continued, his tone shifting to one of rehearsed humility. It has been brought to my attention that some of my published works may not have adequately acknowledged the contributions of junior colleagues. While this was never intentional, I take full responsibility for any oversight. Murmurs rippled through the audience. This carefully worded non-apology portrayed decades of systematic appropriation as mere administrative oversight. The Anderson Foundation represents my commitment to supporting the next generation of medical innovators with both financial resources and proper recognition. When he finished his prepared remarks, the hospital's PR director stepped forward to manage questions. The first few came from friendly sources asking about the foundation's funding and application process. My father handled these with practiced ease. Then a healthcare reporter from the Tribune raised her hand. Dr. Anderson, could you address the specific allegations regarding Dr. Lena Williams's breast cancer research protocol that you were preparing to publish under your name? My father's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. As I mentioned, there have been instances where attribution may have been unclear. The Foundation's first initiative will focus on oncology research, including Dr. Williams's promising work. The reporter persisted. That doesn't answer the question about why you were claiming her work as your own. Is it true the Hospital Ethics Board has been investigating multiple instances of research appropriation throughout your career? My father glanced toward his attorney, who stepped slightly forward in a subtle signal. I'm not at liberty to discuss ongoing internal reviews, my father replied. But I assure you, any misunderstandings are being addressed constructively. As the questioning continued, growing increasingly pointed, I noticed my father repeatedly looking in our direction. Each time his gaze met mine, I maintained steady eye contact, refusing to look away first. His assumption that I had orchestrated this public scrutiny was clear in his expression. The PR director attempted to wrap up the questions, but Dr. Williams stood before they could conclude. Dr. Anderson, she said, her voice clear and steady. You've characterized your actions as oversight and misunderstanding. Would you care to explain how my research data appeared in your publication draft, with only your name listed as the primary investigator? The room fell silent as my father stared at her. For perhaps the first time in his professional life, he appeared momentarily at a loss for words. Dr. Williams, he finally responded, his tone cooling. Individual research disagreements are best handled through proper institutional channels, not public forums. I tried institutional channels for 3 years, she replied evenly. Each time I was told to be patient, to understand the politics of academic medicine, to appreciate the mentorship you were providing by guiding my work. Another doctor stood beside her. I had a similar experience with surgical techniques I developed in 2017, techniques that appeared in your keynote address at the National Surgical Conference with no attribution. My father's attorney intervened, approaching the podium. Dr. Anderson has acknowledged that attribution issues occurred and is taking concrete steps to make amends through the foundation. This press conference is not the appropriate venue for airing individual grievances. From my seat, I could see my father's carefully constructed narrative crumbling. The controlled announcement he had planned was spiraling into the very public exposure he had tried to prevent. A hospital board member approached the podium, whispering something to my father. After a brief tense exchange, my father stepped back to the microphone. In light of the concerns raised today, he said, his voice noticeably less confident, I believe transparency is essential. The hospital has conducted a preliminary review of attribution in my published works. I have agreed to cooperate fully with this process and to accept their findings. It was damage control, not genuine accountability, but it represented the first crack in his facade. As the press conference devolved into chaotic questioning, I felt a tap on my shoulder. James nodded toward the exit, and the three of us slipped out quietly. In the hospital corridor, we found a quiet alcove to regroup. "That didn't go as he planned," Abigail observed. "It's only the beginning," James replied. "Once the full ethics review is public, there will be more questions, possibly retractions of published papers." I remained silent, processing the events we had just witnessed. My father's public persona, the foundation of his identity and our family dynamic, was unraveling before our eyes. "Are you okay?" Abigail asked me softly. Before I could answer, we heard my name called from down the corridor. Dr. Williams was approaching, accompanied by several colleagues. "Isabella," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for your courage. Without you bringing this to light, we might never have been heard." "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what was happening," I replied, shaking her hand. "Better late than never," she said with a small smile. "Some never find the courage to question powerful figures, especially when they're family." As we parted ways, I felt a weight lifting, not just the burden of seeking my father's approval, but the heavier weight of complicity in his system of deception. For the first time in my life, I had chosen truth over family mythology, integrity over comfortable lies. Whatever came next for the Anderson family, I knew I could face it standing firmly in my own truth. 6 months after the press conference, Chicago's autumn painted the city in brilliant oranges and reds as I finalized details for the Lakeside Hospital Charity Gala. My event planning business had weathered the initial storm of my father's scandal and emerged stronger with clients who valued integrity over connections. "The centerpieces look perfect," my assistant Lisa commented as we supervised the setup. "Dr. Williams will be pleased." Lena Williams had become more than just a client in the months since the press conference. After the hospital's ethics committee released their findings substantiating 23 instances of research appropriation, throughout my father's career, she had been appointed to lead the newly established Research Integrity Committee. Tonight's gala would raise funds for her original breast cancer treatment protocol, now in clinical trials under her direction. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Just parked. Sophie has the baby in the carrier. See you inside." James had faced professional challenges in the aftermath of our father's disgrace, but his own reputation for ethical practice had ultimately protected him. Now directing his own research department, he had implemented transparency measures that were being adopted throughout the hospital system. As guests began arriving, I greeted hospital board members and donors with professional warmth. Many had questioned my involvement, initially concerned about the Anderson name's new associations, but Dr. Williams had insisted I organize tonight's event. "There's something poetic about it," she had said when we discussed the gala months earlier. "Your father took credit for others' work. You're using your talents to ensure proper credit is given going forward." My mother arrived alone, elegant as always, but with a new independence in her bearing. The divorce proceedings had been finalized 3 months ago, ending a marriage that had been built as much on image as on love. "Isabella," she said, embracing me with genuine warmth, "everything looks beautiful." Our relationship had undergone its own transformation. Without my father's domineering presence, we were slowly building a more authentic connection. She had started volunteering at a women's shelter, finding purpose beyond the socialite role she had played for decades. "Dad's paper was officially retracted yesterday," Abigail reported as she joined us looking professional in her new role as counsel for the hospital's ethics committee. "That makes 17 retractions so far." My father's professional downfall had been comprehensive. After the ethics committee's report was published, medical journals began investigating his publications. One by one, papers were retracted as evidence of appropriation emerged. His medical license was currently under review, and several former colleagues were pursuing civil claims for credit and compensation. The personal consequences had been equally severe. The divorce had cost him half his assets. His carefully cultivated social circle had largely abandoned him. James maintained minimal contact out of professional necessity. Abigail spoke to him only through attorneys regarding the ongoing legal matters. I had not spoken to him since the press conference. According to my mother, he had retreated to a lakeside property in Michigan, working on a memoir he claimed would set the record straight. Early drafts had been rejected by publishers concerned about legal liability. As dinner concluded and the fundraising portion of the evening began, Dr. Williams took the podium to describe her research and its potential impact on breast cancer treatment. Watching her speak with authority and passion, I felt a profound satisfaction that transcended the professional pride of executing a successful event. James found me during the dancing portion of the evening. "Have you seen the latest medical journal?" he asked, bouncing his infant son gently in his arms. "They're running a special issue on research ethics. You're mentioned in the editor's letter." Me, why? As the catalyst who exposed one of the most significant cases of academic fraud in recent medical history. His expression grew serious. "It took courage, Izzy. I should have seen what was happening years ago." "We all saw what we were conditioned to see," I replied. "Dad was very good at creating his own reality and making us live in it." The event concluded with the announcement that the gala had exceeded its fundraising goal by 30%. As guests departed, Dr. Williams approached me with a bouquet of flowers taken from one of the centerpieces. "These belong with you tonight," she said. "Without your willingness to challenge your father, my research might never have seen the light of day." After the cleanup was complete and the venue staff had been thanked, I found myself alone in the empty ballroom. 6 months earlier, I had stood in a similar room, shattered by my father's whispered shame. Tonight, I felt only peace and a quiet pride in staying true to my principles. My phone buzzed with a text from Taylor. "Saw the news about the successful gala. Drinks tomorrow to celebrate, so proud of you." Taylor had been my rock throughout the tumultuous months, helping me navigate both the personal and professional fallout. Our friendship had deepened through the crisis, providing a foundation of support I had never experienced in my family of origin. In the months since confronting my father, I had begun therapy to address the patterns of seeking validation that had shaped my life. Slowly, I was learning to recognize my own worth, independent of external approval. The professional success I had always worked for had come ironically when I stopped trying to prove myself to my father. I had even begun dating again after years of putting my personal life on hold for career advancement. Michael, an architectural photographer I had met while planning a gallery opening, appreciated my integrity as much as my professional skills. For the first time, I was building a relationship based on mutual respect, rather than trying to fill the approval void my father had created. As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a hospital board member had left behind a program from the evening. On the acknowledgments page, my name appeared with a simple line: "Event Design and Coordination by Isabella Anderson, whose commitment to integrity made this research possible." The recognition brought tears to my eyes, not because I needed the validation, but because it represented a fundamental truth I had finally embraced. Authentic success comes from living with integrity, not from projections of perfection. My father had spent a lifetime building a career and family image based on appearances and appropriation. In the end, his whispered shame had revealed more about his character than mine. The truth he had tried so desperately to suppress had ultimately set me free from the cycle of seeking his approval. As I left the ballroom, I thought about the different forms of legacy. My father had sought his through accolades and recognition, building a house of cards that eventually collapsed. I was finding mine through honest work and authentic relationships constructed slowly, but on a foundation of truth. 6 months ago, standing humiliated at my father's retirement party, I could never have imagined the journey ahead. The painful words he whispered had become the catalyst for profound change, not just in the medical community, but in my understanding of family integrity and self-worth. The journey wasn't over. There would be more legal proceedings, more professional adjustments, more family healing or fracturing. But for perhaps the first time in my life, I was moving forward not as Robert Anderson's disappointing daughter, but as Isabella, a woman standing firmly in her own truth and worth. Has anyone in your life ever made you question your worth because of your career choice or personal values? What helped you find the strength to stand in your truth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of finding freedom through facing difficult truths resonated with you, please subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' approval. Thank you for joining me in this vulnerable story of finding strength through authenticity.